You're listening to In the Moment on South Dakota Public Broadcasting. I'm Lori Walsh. Representative Tyler Tordsen is a Republican from District 14. He is new to the state legislature, but he's a familiar face in state politics. And for the past few years, he's been the Southeast Regional Director and State Director of Tribal Affairs for U.S. Senator Mike Rounds. In Pierre, he's a member of the House Education and House Judiciary Committees, and he's with us now in our Capitol studio in Pierre. Representative Tordsen, welcome back to In the Moment. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Lori. It's good to hear from you again.
We have so many things to talk about as this session really heats up and speeds up as we run into deadlines. But I want to go back and highlight something that you were interested in passing, which was House Bill 1101 that has now passed the House and the Senate. And a lot of legislation gets big headlines. This is one that probably not many people have noticed. Tell us a little bit about the act to ensure labeling of American Indian arts and crafts and why you think it's important and it got such strong support.
Yeah, Laura, I appreciate you highlighting that one for me. This is near and dear to my heart. It's special to me because it's my first piece of legislation too, now awaiting the governor's signature like you mentioned. This one I worked on, the first one I picked up, worked with South Dakota Retailers Association on, engaged different stakeholders on, and really what it is an old statute, 1960s, 1970s statute that was meant to protect and lift up Native American artists. And really what we found out is that it wasn't being enforced. It was never enforced to date. It had ambiguous language that mentioned similar to, and so the proposal was to cut two words, similar to, and to add four, purports to be an, just to help clean it up. And so that way it could be enforceable, provided clarity to retailers. And then the other byproduct of it that was really awesome was in the engagement with stakeholders and talking to tribes and different organizations and folks too, was the ability to, how many Native artists don't even realize that this is on the books, that they could have a niche market similar to like Made in South Dakota. And so if they're not advertising their products as an authentic Native American made product already, they should. And so now it had, like you said, tremendous support. I think only one no vote over in the Senate. And I'm really looking forward to seeing this get signed into law. And then the spinoff, I think, is going to be seeing what we can do to create this new market and kind of lift up Native artists, protect Native artists, and give them some economic development opportunity too. Yeah,
this is all part of, we talked with Tamara St. John before about Native American tourism and some of the, really across the aisle and across agencies and across the country and the world, trying to figure out how do we share the stories, but yet keep those stories in the purview of the people who own the stories and figure out Native American tourism that is actually controlled by the people who are on the land. So Fascinating stuff. We'll talk more about that in the future. This morning, House Bill 1220 passed unanimously out of, I guess I'm not sure.
Judiciary.
Thank you very much, Judiciary, for that little assist. And this is it's an abortion piece of legislation, which we didn't see many of this session. I thought we would see more. But this one provides protection for a female subjected to an unlawful abortion. She may not be held criminally liable. Tell us a little bit about this piece of legislation.
Sure. Yeah, I'm coming off of a super busy morning. I was in the same room, 413 in the Capitol for education right away, bright and early, and then Judiciary right out. So we just got through that bill about an hour and a half ago, so you guys are pretty fresh on it. That one was pretty easy. It was a couple of sentences too, no opposition, and like you mentioned in the title, it just makes sure that we're not criminally prosecuting women who have had an abortion or seek an abortion. So again, no opposition. To your point too, I was kind of surprised, going into this, especially last year, even leading up to the Supreme Court decision. I thought we would have seen a lot more of those pieces of legislation, but for the most part, it's been pretty quiet this year.
Your partner in District 14, Republican Taylor Rayfield, had a bill that dealt with exceptions for the health and life of the mother. That did not go forward. It was pulled at the request of the sponsor. Do you see anything else in the future? This conversation is done for now. What are your predictions?
Yeah, so that bill wasn't before a committee that I serve on.
Yeah.
I was kind of looking forward to having the full conversation. I think that was something last year in talking to voters and constituents that was an important piece, was just needing the clarity for the medical professionals and that kind of thing too. And so I was kind of surprised to see it tabled. I certainly have a lot of respect for Representative Rayfeld, and I trust her decision making in bringing that bill and deciding to pull it at this time. But I think the conversation is still ongoing. Certainly there's talks of our petition drive to get a ballot measure. It would be a year and a half from now in the 2024 election. So that still gives us an opportunity, even if there's not major abortion bills that we're debating or discussing here in the legislature this session, which we're already past the halfway point. I would probably guess that we'll have those conversations and see more of that if necessary next year. I think people are realizing and living with our trigger law and our new way in South Dakota, and seeing what tweaks do need to be made. But to your point, I think the conversation is still certainly going to be ongoing.
You mentioned the House Education Committee this morning. Some lively discussion during that time. Tell us a little bit about what came out of that committee this morning.
Yeah, so we had 2 bills up this morning. This is our last committee meeting before crossover day next week, so tackled the last of the House bills. And 2 of them were up. One was on a statewide virtual school for K-12 students. Then the other one was on kind of school vouchers, school choice. Really good conversation, really good discussion and questioning. For me, I've always said that I'm a product of public education, K-12 in this state, public higher education too. I got two little boys, almost a 1-year-old, almost a 3-year-old. And so kindergarten for us is going to be here before we know it. And, I support public education too. I think that statewide we kind of have an open enrollment feel, and there's certainly a conversation for school choice. Some of the discussion and kind of where I got hung up, we ultimately defeated both of those bills in committee. But some of the questioning that I had was some of the data. We had a presentation from Secretary of Ed Graves last month in House Ed. And if you look at some of the data on the DOE dashboard, our proficiency rates in English and in math statewide for all students is below what would be a passing grade. Like 50%, I think, for education. And if you look at Native students, it's even worse. As you know, I'm a enrolled tribal member from Sisseton and Wahpeton. And so that's important to me in general. I want all of our students to be proficient in the STEM categories. And I also want them to have on time and graduation rates and completion rates. And that stuff were low. I think Native American, so all students statewide, on-time graduation rate right now for 2022 was 82%. For Native students, it's like 46%. And to me, that's just unacceptable. And so my question was, I ended up being a no on both of those bills. I don't think we're ready for that at the time. But we can't just be satisfied with the status quo. And so I have a lot of respect for our public educators and our system. But we need to do a deeper dive. We need to be creative, and we need to be looking into these stats and what can we do better.
There are some real challenges in that proficiency as well because of the pandemic. Even if South Dakota, fared better than other states, for example, it's still going to be, there's a long ripple effect to the educational drop during that time for some kids, at least.
Yeah, that was some of the conversation that we heard too, in opposition of doing a virtual school K-12 that big and that wide. But at the same time, too, some of these stats, and you can go back and look at the history, some of those graduation rates and proficiency rates have kind of hovered around that. There probably was a little bit of a dip there with the pandemic and some of the online and the challenges of that in general. But some of this stuff goes back decades. And so being a member of the Education Committee, I'm ready to get into the work on it.
Yeah, that gap between Native students and non-Native students is shameful. I don't think that's saying too much to use that word. Is it the little things? Is it graduation honor song legislation? Is it big sweeping things? Is it Ocheti Shakowin essential understandings? From your perspective, we have a lot of information. We might not have all the information we need, but based on the information we currently have, what are some of the things that you would like to see really pushed forward to close that gap?
Yeah, I think it's honestly all of the above. I think education certainly starts in the home. There's some challenges too in rural communities, and there's challenges with reservation communities too. But it starts in the home. It's supportive families, supportive counselors and that kind of thing, mentors, and just an encouragement for education, and realizing that I think former chairman from Cheyenne River, Harold Fraser, used to say education's the best way out of poverty, or the quickest way out of poverty too. And so it's going to be multifaceted. It's going to be the little things that show respect. I think the honor song. Being able to wear a beaded cap at graduation, or an eagle feather, which is a show of honoring, being able to, I think, the OSEUs, the Osheti Essential Understandings, as you mentioned, have been around for a long time. They were created with educators, native and non-native in this state, cultural advisors and historians that really created these content standards that have been around since the late 2000s, approved and adopted, but just totally not implemented as much as we should see. And so that's another piece of it too, I think. There's going to be more to it, and it's going to be an all of the above approach.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to In the Moment on South Dakota Public Broadcasting. My guest is Representative Tyler Tordsen from District 14. He's a Republican. He has a very busy week, and especially a busy day, because there was a bill you were the prime sponsor of, Tyler, Senate Bill 189, which passed unanimously this morning out of state Senate Affairs. And this gets into this whole big conversation about contracting with companies owned or controlled by certain foreign entities or governments. Tell us about this legislation.
So this one is being led by Senator Jim Stalzer in conjunction with the governor's office too. And so that one we had a pretty significant amendment, making sure that we're doing our best to make sound policy decisions in the state. And so we're engaging all the stakeholders as we go. So that's why you see the original version versus the amended version that was up in committee today that passed. Yeah. And so that has a little bit of a ways to go yet before it gets to me over in the House. But it's a good, I think it's a good bill, obviously, that is making sure that we're being conscious of other countries that don't have the United States' best interests at heart too, and so making sure that we're just conscientious of contracts that we're doing or equipment that we're buying or things like that as well.
Yeah, there are some exceptions in here.
Correct.
That if there is no other market participant, if this good or service would be otherwise unavailable, compliance is not possible, and the commissioner decides that. Tell me the role of technology, cybersecurity, what's possible, what's not possible, being protective, but not shutting down entire industries because you can't get a chip that happens to be only made in China.
Yeah, so again, just working the language, I commend the governor's office too for really doing a good sit down with different stakeholders that had some of the concerns, making sure that we're getting the language as appropriate as we can. So like I said, we're making sound policy decisions in the state. There was another component of it too to make sure that we're not having any unintended consequences with legislation as well. Mm-hmm. And so making sure that somebody who's maybe here, who's from a foreign country, who doesn't have citizenship, is maybe a visa holder and owns, let's say, a hotel chain, that they are able to do contracts with the state or hold a state convention or conference or that kind of thing too. And so we made sure to really look at the language, and glad I had a good hearing today. Obviously, I wasn't able to get over there because I was busy with my 2 back-to-back pack schedule this morning, but I'm looking forward to the conversation ongoing, and I think we're going to see that one and get that back to the governor for her signature later on.
A freshman state lawmaker, a relatively new dad. I was looking at your Facebook page, and that is a pretty impressive head of hair on your youngest child.
That's right.
You got to miss him too, right? Like, how are you balancing the important work that you're doing really for him on house education, especially, right? Yep. And then just wanting to be home and be present for him. What's that like for you?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate that my 10-month-old he knew right when I took off that he started sleeping good, and so I just hang in there, buddy. 4-day weeks. I try to get back. We usually get out if it's a Thursday or Friday. Try to get out early, hit the road right away, and get home and get back to the family. Give my wife a break a little bit too, and have a good weekend with them, which rejuvenates me as well. Gets me back out here. The saving grace of it is that it's this year it's 38 days or less. We get in, we balance the budget. We hopefully are making sound policy decisions. We're hopefully delivering a tax cut that can help families such as my own, and just help all South Dakotans and be able to get home. I like that it's a short-term kind of 2 months citizen legislature that has natural accountability built into it too. But I'll tell you, I'm happy that I'm busy during the day because it is so easy to miss them and want to get home right away. So I didn't get to talk to them on the way to daycare this morning, but my 2-year-old left me a voicemail, so I'm looking forward to listening to him and catching him after daycare. FaceTime is nice too. So
I love it. Which tax cut?
Oh yeah, we'll see. Obviously last night and today, some of the budget numbers, the revenue projections are coming in. So we're getting ready to start kind of our negotiations, and as a caucus deciding, what our priorities are going to be. I think we're looking at. I was just jotting down some notes. roughly about 190 million ongoing to play with. That's not counting the grocery sales tax. Obviously, that's one of them that are up for consideration. Some on-time funds too of what are going to be some good investments in the state that we can make on a one-time basis as well. And so we're going to have some conversations. We are getting into the meat of it now on this last half on budget priorities, what tax cuts we can and can't do, and what things we're gonna set the budget on.
Representative Tyler Tordsen, you've been more than generous with your time. Go have some lunch and get back to work. Thanks.
Sounds good.
Thanks for
Appreciate
being
it.
here.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
And we are going to talk about that next. The revenues, the revenue projections, the taxes. Jonathan Ellis is with us for our Dakota Political Junkies conversation. You are on listener-supported SDPB Radio.